Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about our least favorite late night host, Bill Maher. He recently put his foot in his mouth again last weekend when he made a stupid and inappropriate blog post about comic books following Stan Lee's death. Yeah, if you hadn't heard, comic books legend Stan Lee recently passed away at 95. And needless to say, this guy's reputation precedes him. Stan has created countless characters that have not only gone on to dominate the comic books world, they've also been adapted into highly successful and influential TV shows and movies as well. Spider-Man, Iron Man, the Hulk, and Doctor Strange are just a few characters that come to mind. So, needless to say, we wouldn't have Marvel Comics or the Marvel Cinematic Universe if it wasn't for Stan Lee, at least not in the way it is now. He was a groundbreaking, influential, superstar legend, not only in his own industry, but he also influenced the world and its pop culture more than you can imagine. Sad to see him go for sure, but he did live a long and fruitful life, and with his passing, we can once again appreciate all the hard work and amazing characters and entertainment products Stan's helped create. It's sad to see him go, but now we can appreciate him more than ever. Well, that's what most people would say after Stan Lee's passing, but Bill Maher seems to see things differently. Bill Maher thought now was a good time to go on his blog and rant about how comic books are shitty and for kids. And of course, Bill thinks he's oh so much better than Stan Lee, even trying to play down his legacy, which is pretty ironic since Bill Maher's doing this on a blog post, which in my opinion is also for kids or for Tumblr losers. And he has the balls to make fun of comic books when he's on a blog? What an idiot. Pretty pathetic and ill-timed to say the least. And Bill Maher has certainly received some backlash for this hot take, as he should. And now I'm here to give my 2 cents on the story too. Bill did imply that comic book worship has made Americans dumb enough to elect President Trump after all. That's right. Maher even tried to make this political, going so far as to trying to get the president involved. A bit of a stretch, but shouldn't be surprising here either. Bill Maher has Trump derangement syndrome, real bad. And almost every minute of his weekly hour-long show is dedicated to bashing Trump every chance they get. So Bill Maher trying to tie Stan Lee's death in comic books to Trump as well is kind of weird, but it's not surprising either. So to get things started on this story, let's take a look at an article from the Huffington Post called Bill Maher Trashes Fans Mourning Stan Lee and Adults Who Read Comics. Check this out. Bill Maher is getting the ire of the comic book world this weekend after making disparaging remarks about fans who mourn the passing of Marvel icon Stan Lee. In a blog post Maher wrote Saturday, the late night host trashed the impact that Stan Lee had on generations of comic book readers. The guy who created Spider-Man and the Hulk has died, and America is in mourning. Maher's blog post began, deep, deep mourning for a man who inspired millions to, I don't know, watch a movie, I guess? The basis of the criticism seems to originate from his belief that comic books are for children. He chided adults for deciding about 20 years ago that they didn't have to give up kid stuff. Wow, what a party pooper. This Bill Maher guy sounds like an old out-of-touch fart head. He's a duty pants. He's grandpa. He's old grandpa. This is something my dad would always say to me too sometimes. He would walk by in the house and see me watching South Park or playing a Mario game and think, that's some kid shit. And I always try to tell him, it's really not. I mean, I could see why the boomer generation might think that. Cartoons were traditionally for kids, and they can look childish, but that was many decades ago. Things have evolved past that stereotype, especially in modern history and especially in comic books. Clearly, Bill Maher has never read or even heard about the stories in one of these books, because comic books actually have very adult themes and story arcs nowadays. Spider-Man went from a young high school student fighting local crooks back in the 60s, all the way up until now being a full-grown man and scientist, and husband and father, sometimes, depending on the universe you're in. Another example would be Marvel's Civil War comic event, which covered all kinds of modern issues like nationalism, racism, sexism, war, and government control and politics. So needless to say, comics are not a kid's thing anymore, and neither are cartoons. And they weren't necessarily before either, not even mostly. The only way you could think comics are for little kids now is to have never read one, which I assume is the case with Bill Maher. And why does Bill Maher think he's above this stuff anyway? He says all Stan Lee did was get people to watch movies, like that's no big deal or beneath him. Shit, Bill, you've been in movies. That's what you do. And you've even been in a Marvel movie, as this article goes over later. We'll get to it soon. But besides that, Bill Maher is just another overly political comedian. Sure, he has a talk show where he pretends to be this smart political guy and everything, but in my opinion, Bill's just as bad as any other late night comedy host. He's not better than anyone. It's not this high art or super important or anything, is what I'm getting at. And Bill looking down his nose at Marvel comics and movies is simply laughable. I could watch half a Spider-Man movie and get more out of that than Bill's entire 30-year plus career. One Iron Man movie has done more good for entertainment and the country and the world than any of the bullshit comedy specials Bill's done year after year. So basically, I think it's time this old timer takes a seat and peacefully sunsets himself. They pretended comic books were actually sophisticated literature, Maher said. Maher then took the rather large leap from comics to the political system. I don't think it's a huge stretch to suggest that Donald Trump could only get elected in a country that thinks comic books are important. As you would expect, commentators on Facebook and on the real-time longtime site disagreed, and they were not kind. Some pointed to the countless numbers of children who learned to read from comics, and scores of artists and writers who found their careers after being inspired by Lee. Jesus Christ, Bill. Had to squeeze a Trump diss in there somehow, but as I said before, you're stretching, and well, this all seems very forced. I'm not even sure if Bill actually hates Trump as much as it seems. Maybe he's just doing it for the money or the attention at this point, or he wants to fit in with all the other late night hosts who also overbash Trump, or maybe this is coming down from the top as many suspect. Wouldn't be surprised with the companies that own these shows. They're all liberal influenced and they're probably pressuring them to bash Trump more. NBC certainly does this with The Tonight Show and Saturday Night Live. Viacom also has ruined many of their channels with liberal propaganda, like Comedy Central and MTV, MTV News and MTV Decoded, all that bullshit. And well, HBO isn't far off here. While they still have some great shows and classic content, HBO is also libtarded to the max with its higher-ups and CEO. And well, it appears Bill Maher has become the face of HBO's pro-leftist, anti-Trump regime. Many readers pointed out Maher's hypocrisy in the debate. Don't you own part of the Mets? Said one Facebook user. You know, a bunch of guys who get paid obscene amounts of money to play a children's game and take it way too seriously? Indeed, Maher does own a stake in the Mets. Says the guy who smokes pot like a college student, said another reader. The vast majority of the comments simply described the rant as tone deaf or sounding like an old man telling kids to get off the lawn. Yep, and that's why I said this before too. Bill Maher sounds like an old out-of-touch man complaining about the kids playing in his yard. And also, yeah, he's a big hypocrite too. I mean, if he was a cop or a soldier or a heart surgeon, then maybe he could have a point here. Those jobs are much more important and significant to a town, community, or country. They're the kind of life or death shit that make comic books seem a little trivial and unimportant, but Bill does the same kind of trivial shit himself, except much worse. Late night TV and stand-up comedy isn't better than comic books, Bill. Hate to break it to you. And I'm also glad someone brought up how Bill is part owner of a baseball team that's professionally playing a kid's sport. Perfect point. Oddly enough, Maher didn't seem to mind appearing in Marvel's Iron Man 3, though we should note, the scene ended up being deleted. And here's the deleted clip, which you can find on YouTube. Check this out.
And how is President Ellis responding? By taking the guy they call War Machine and giving him a paint job. Because if there's one thing that scares violent international terrorists, it's a rebrand.
And that, of course, was from the movie Iron Man 3, as we said before. And that's based on a character co-created by Stan Lee, whom Bill Maher has turned on and is mocking him and his fans immediately after his death. Absolutely embarrassing and deplorable. Bill Maher and HBO should be ashamed of themselves. And Bill sure didn't mind taking that paycheck from Marvel when they offered him a role in their movie. I guess in that situation it was prudent for Bill to keep this distaste for comic books to himself. Looks like he held that opinion pretty close to the vest for years, actually. I mean, it's been 5 years since Iron Man 3 came out, and since then, comic book movies have only gotten bigger too. Avengers Infinity War just came out earlier this year, and that was pretty much the biggest movie of all time. Not only did its budget of over $300 million make it one of the most expensive movies ever made, it also had box office results that showed that all paid off. Infinity War was not only the highest grossing movie of 2018, it's also the 4th highest grossing movie ever. And this Avengers sequel had some stiff competition this year too. Black Panther also came out a few months before it, and it was a total game changer in its own right, setting records for a February release and also having a groundbreaking all-black cast and crew, which undoubtedly changed the world this year. Come on, Black Panther and references to it can be seen everywhere in 2018. Everyone was talking about this movie in one way or the other. Everyone talked about its characters, their favorite scenes, the songs, the score. TV shows made parodies and goofed on Black Panther, like Saturday Night Live did, and South Park even had a season premiere episode about it. And Black Panther's music is still being played all across the country on the radio and on live streams and everywhere. Kendrick Lamar, SZA, 2 Chainz, Future, Travis Scott, all the hottest artists in rap and hip-hop got in on that movie's soundtrack, and it was excellent, just like how the movie was and how Infinity War was too, which would also feature Black Panther in it, and it had scenes in Black Panther's homeland of Wakanda. Oh wait, yeah, I almost forgot about that part. Wakanda was a big influence this year too. Wakanda forever. So, with all that said, in the end, Bill Maher is just plain wrong here. Clearly Stan Lee and his comic books and their characters, like Black Panther and many of the Avengers, they have made a big, long-lasting impact on American pop culture, and also the world. Now, I won't go so far as to say they cured cancer or anything, but let's not undervalue good creative entertainment either. The doctors and police officers and lawyers and astronauts of the world, they need entertainment in their lives too. For example, a guy coming home from a long day of heart transplant surgeries, he needs to watch something to get his mind off of things for a while. And while some might prefer the old, dated political ramblings of degenerates like Bill Maher, others, many more others, we prefer Marvel and other comic book movies. And worst of all here is, I don't even think Bill believes what he's saying, because he's highly highly involved in TV and movies himself, including some Stan Lee and Marvel-influenced movies as we saw today. So really, actually, I think Bill is just bitter or butthurt or something, or he's getting orders from his liberal leaders. He's losing touch with the people for sure, and Bill doesn't understand all this superhero comic book stuff, so I guess that's why he's lashing out. The problem is, he probably picked the worst time ever to let this out into the open. Saying comics are dumb and for kids right after one of its greats like Stan Lee dies is pretty messed up. Not to mention, more importantly, it's just plain wrong. What do you guys think? Are comic books for children? Should Bill Maher be attacking Stan Lee after his death here? And do you think our country's fascination with comic books is what led to Trump's election? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. We'll see y'all next time.